A very good morning to our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The event will begin shortly. We are currently adding more chairs and you can feel free to take your seat. Please be reminded to turn your mobile phones into silent mode for today's proceedings. Thank you for the cooperation. Yang Berusaha, Dr. Trisha Yo, Chief Executive Officer, Ideas Malaysia. Esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Selamat pagi and good morning. On behalf of Ideas Malaysia, welcome to the Malaysia Open Budget Index MyOBI 2024 launch. On behalf of Ideas Malaysia, we would like to thank and express our gratitude to our partner, the European Union, for their support towards this project. For everyone's information, our Secretariat will be distributing the copies of our report after the presentation. Without further ado, to begin today's proceedings, may I please have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Trisha Yo, CEO of Ideas, for the welcoming and keynote address.
Thank you so much, Shara. Salam sejahtera dan selamat pagi. Saya ucapkan kepada semua tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. A very good morning. I'd like to wish to all of you friends, thank you for joining us this morning. Firstly, I'd like to warmly welcome and thank YB Michelle Ng, who's here seated in front, Selangor Public Accounts Committee PAC member, and Adun for Subang Jaya. Puan Zirawati Kadir, the Director of the National Audit Department, Selangor. And special thanks to Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Shamsuri Mokhtar, who couldn't be with us today, Chief Minister of Terengganu, but has kindly prepared a recorded speech for us, which you will hear at the end of today's event. Also, thank you to representatives from various embassies, from the European Union and others. So, welcome guests, ladies and gentlemen, to today's launch of the Malaysia Open Budget Index 2024, or MyOBI. MyOBI is something that Ideas coined, and this is the second edition of the Open Budget Index, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, as well as my colleagues shortly. Partners as well from the different states all across the country, thank you for being here with us today. This second installment of MyOBI will assess how states performed last year in terms of budget transparency. So MyOBI was first launched in 2022 after a year of setting the groundwork to design the assessment and train our assessment partners, comprising civil society organizations and civic-minded individuals involved in public policy initiatives. So friends, with the recent run of state elections, we are seeing now greater variations in political leadership among state governments, heightened competition at the state level. Quite often, the spotlight is on federal reforms and politics, but we should not forget that democracy needs to be felt and mobilized at the local level too. In fact, there are even more demands, for example, coming from states over the last even 3 to 6 months. So a lot of spotlight at the state level. What happens at the state? In response to these needs, Ideas initiated MyOBI because we actually have very little information on how much is spent by state governments and where it is spent for specific projects and programs. MyOBI, we hope, will enhance the demand for democratic accountability and, of course, also create some level of competition among the different state governments. MyOBI aims to entrench a national benchmark for proactive financial disclosure from all 13 state governments, By ranking the states in terms of budget transparency, we hope to see the states competing to improve budget transparency and oversight. Over the last year, we've received some responses from state governments, but now we have only set the groundwork. In the years ahead, we look forward to ideas continually engaging state governments and legislatures to improve fiscal transparency and oversight. MyOBI also aims to enable meaningful public participation in state policy making and to build a network of CSOs and civic-minded individuals based in all 13 states who are able to monitor policy delivery and who are equipped to demand accountability from their respective state governments. Our partners for MyOBI 2024 are actually here with us today. Yesterday, we concluded a successful partners summit where we gathered all of our state partners to talk to them about this edition. And of course, having traveled from so far away from different states, they're also here with us today. May I see a show of hands of those of you who are the MyOBI partners so that we can recognize you today? Yeah, maybe we can thank them for being here. Let's show them a round of applause. So these individuals have been selected. They are our eyes and ears and feet and hands on the ground. They have been the ones who have been trained on understanding the fiscal cycle and asking questions about the budget. On their own accord, some of them even set up meetings with lawmakers and observed their state's budget debate. We're very proud of them because it's hard to do this kind of work from the center, from the Klang Valley alone. And a lot of attention is given to the national budget every year, where the Prime Minister tables this in Parliament in October or November. But little attention is given to the state-level budgets, which are equally important, if not more so, because it's the closest to what happens on the ground and felt by people in neighborhoods. So on behalf of IDEAS, I'd like to thank them, our MyOBI partners, for their efforts in digging up state budget documents, which we know is a lot of hard work. Making budget information available is a minimum step towards improving transparency and governance for all state governments. Budget transparency is a crucial step towards improving standards for fiscal governance, fostering accountability, and building trust in our democracy at the state level. Transparency in budgeting processes helps to build institutional trust. Clear and comprehensive information about how public funds are managed builds confidence in government institutions. So budget transparency ensures that government actions and decisions regarding public funds are open to scrutiny and promotes fairness and equity. I think all of us have been accustomed to news articles of all kinds of project mismanagement, funds misallocations, and at the end of it, all of these projects are sitting at our very doorstep. They are within our neighborhoods, across roads, close to where we are. Therefore, scrutinizing budgets at the local and the state level do impact on our own quality of life. So IDEAS is committed to upholding the principles of democratic governance in our work on public finance and good governance. This initiative ensures that the general public and civil society can be informed and contribute meaningfully as it fosters a sense of ownership and accountability and debate to demand better fiscal accountability. We believe that this engagement helps prevent misappropriation and mismanagement of resources, leading to a more efficient and effective use of public funds. IDEAS encourages other state governments to ensure that all budget documents are published in a timely manner, and in particular, documents such as the estimates of revenue and expenditure, which provides the details of the budget, should be accessible. When state governments publish detailed and timely budget documents, it becomes easier to track their public spending and revenue. So in 2022, the MyOBI top states were Terengganu, Selangor, and Negeri Sembilan. That was 2 years ago. The states have had another year to improve on their standing, and in a short while, my team members will announce MyOBI 2024 winners, followed by a panel discussion and Q&A. So perhaps you can help to give a drum roll later before my colleague announces the results. Let's see if Terengganu, Selangor, and Negeri Sembilan are still the top states in providing budget transparency. Of course, this is not the end. There are many other avenues still that we can explore to ensure better transparency and accountability. We know that at the national level, for example, there are some things that are also off budget. There are off-budget agencies, and similarly at the state level, there are other sorts of agencies and GLCs that are not captured by the budget. We hope to be able to do more of this scrutinizing in the future. But nevertheless, this is a great start, and we hope that Ideas Work provides inspiration also to other organizations looking at transparency and accountability more generally. We invite you to engage actively in this process, providing your valuable input and feedback. Thank you for your continued support and participation in building a transparent and accountable financial management system. Once again, friends, colleagues, partners, people who have traveled very far to come here to be with us in KL today, thank you for joining us this morning. And together, I believe we can make a difference and ensure that our resources, our taxpayers' money, are used wisely and equitably. Let's work together to make this initiative a success and build a stronger, more transparent future for ourselves, our families, and our communities around us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for today, and look forward to you receiving the results of MyOBI 2024. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Trisha. Budget transparency truly is crucial even at the state level. Now, we would like to invite Alyssa Rode, Senior Research Manager, and Nishal Muniandi, Senior Research Executive, both under the Public Finance Unit at Ideas, to present Malaysia Open Budget Index MyOBI 2024 findings. Welcome.
Yeah, can I have the slides? Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today, this morning with us. I'm glad to see such a crowd that's interested in state budget transparency. Malaysia Open Budget Index, or MyOBI, is an ideas initiative to create greater demand for accountability at the state level. And as Trisha introduced, we do this in two ways. First, we want to create a national benchmark for state budget transparency and oversight to get state governments to pay attention to transparency, to their processes for oversight in the Dewan Undangan Negeri, and to compete to become best at this and to show their voters that they can engage their constituents and share what they are doing with their state budgets. And secondly, we want to equip state-based civil society to demand accountability, to strengthen democracy at the local level. And we do this by outreach and training. So far, we have recruited partners to run 2 rounds of the MyOBI assessment. And we train our partners to look at the budget documents of the states, look for them. Sometimes it's hard to dig up. And to understand the fiscal cycle and to look at the data and use it for their own advocacy. Our partners come from different causes, some for women's rights, labor or human rights. And what we do is also reach out to people from other states, civil society, and individuals, and do the same training and outreach so that we can start to build a movement for demanding more budget transparency. And I'd like to thank our partners who hail from different civil society organizations. We have representatives from ABIM, IKRAM, Serata from Sabah, Purple Lily and Runding Institute from Sarawak, Persatuan Kecemerlangan dan Pembangunan Perlis, as well as tertiary student groups from Monash, and USIM, or grassroots involved in public policy and politics, such as Dewan Muda Johor and Muda, the political party itself. And as you can see, we have quite a wide representation from youth groups. So what started as a seed of an idea in 2020, which we then developed and implemented from 2021, has grown in the past 3 years. After the first MyOBI launch in 2022, we started running workshops to equip state-based civil society and voters, and we also used these workshops to recruit our second batch of assessment partners. So I'm really proud to say that with the help of the team at Ideas, we have run 6 workshops, reaching 172 participants, 4 partner training sessions, and we've engaged with state leaders from Terengganu, Malacca, and Pahang on the importance of budget transparency. Our MyOBI infographics last year reached 34,000 impressions, while the Pantau Wang Kita website, which shows the results, has 18,000 unique user views to date. So how did we get here? Apart from having the support of several funders and our current funder, EU Commission, we also had to build a lot of partnerships and listen to feedback. And I want to credit our partner, Akil from Kelantan, who gave very important feedback from the first MyOBI launch and partners summit. When we were running through, what can we do better? How can we grow this program? The feedback that we got was that Akil stood up and said, I wish we had this type of program and outreach and equipping in Kelantan because, it takes so much for youth in Kelantan to get that kind of exposure. Often these types of workshops are only run in KL or the Klang Valley. So we decided that, all right, the next round, when we get funding, we will go and jelajah negeri, we'll do outreach to the states. And to prepare for that, we committed to running our workshops entirely in BM to be accessible to everyone, a larger crowd. And since then, as you can see, we have actually gone to Kelantan and to Pahang and Malacca and Johor. And our first pilot program in BM was so oversubscribed, we had to increase the hall size. We had a student group from Johor who called up and wanted to send a busload of students. We told them, sorry, we are full, you can't come up. But you know what? If you're so enthusiastic about this, we'll come down to you. So we co-organized a workshop with them, and this was University Tun Hussein On Malaysia's debate club. And they were so inspired that their student leaders then, this year, organized a presidential club debate, which was open. It wasn't just the university. And they got debaters and had a championship where Ideas was also invited to be the panel judges. And they chose for their topic to cover finance and economics and budget in Malaysia. Now, to explain, University Tun Hussein On Malaysia is not an economics-based university. It's a university that specializes in industrial design and business courses. So for the students to take up this challenge, I think it was great, and we're very honored that they chose to do that out of the Pantau Wang Kita workshop. So there's really a lot of space to grow, and there's a lot of interest in what's happening in state budgets and how states are running. And you'll notice that Sabah and Sarawak are still empty. Don't worry, we have noticed that. We saved the best for last, and we hope to run engagements in these states in future with the network that we've been building so far. And why am I telling you all these stories? I think in the run of engagements that we've done, true story, one political leader that I met said, "So why do you want to pay attention to our budget? It is so small, compared to the federal budget." And it's true, often people don't pay attention to state budgets. At the most, there's one article in the news, right, when a state budget comes out. Although I know for Sabah and Sarawak, the news there may cover regionally at least the budgets in more detail. But generally, not much happens. Well, I'm sharing these stories to tell you that there is interest, and your youth are interested. 18-year-olds now who have the vote, and the message that we get from the youth participants in our workshops is, well, now we have the vote, we want to know what to do with it. We want to be informed, and we're tired of racial and religious rhetoric. We want to know how to get engaged with states on a policy basis. And so here are some things they've asked during our workshop. Who is responsible for fixing potholes in our streets? Where does the money come from? Okay, what is the state government doing about diversifying revenues away from environmentally damaging sectors like forests and mining? And this is after showing state budgets and showing people that state revenues tend to come a lot from royalties in mining, in forestry, and from land use. So with just equipping people with this information, they start to ask they start to ask for more information from the state. They start to ask about policy. And this question, by the way, was asked by a Form 6 student. So age is really not a factor. It's more interest and information. Others gave feedback. I am now able to spread awareness and educate the public on budget transparency. I'm able to understand the importance of budgeting and how the government does budgeting and policy. So in a nutshell, transparency matters because making information available is the minimum requirement to enable the state legislatures to exercise oversight. Your aduns, they need this information to ask questions. They need details about what the government is spending on, what programs, where has the development expenditure gone, what are the outcomes. And it's also needed for the public to understand what is going on. And without that understanding, it is impossible to build public trust. So if you want a healthier democracy and trust in the state governments, then the state governments need to make this information available, and they need to communicate it as well in ways that are easy to understand. So give the details, but also give infographics and citizens' versions of budgets. So in the age of distraction by social media and rapid misinformation, public trust is an extremely valuable form of political capital. And well, we are making the pitch here that budget transparency is one easy way to at least put the information out there and start building that. Okay. So what does MyOBI measure? I'll give a bit of the nuts and bolts for you to understand the assessment that we've done. The questionnaires and responses will be available online if you really want to know this in detail, but just in order for you to understand how we do this measurement and what the scores mean. We have two sets of scores, one on public availability and the other on oversight. For public availability, that's the transparency score, and that is the main score that shows the state rankings. So that's what we rank the states on. It's about timeliness and quality of information from the budget documents. documents have to be available online freely. It has to be published in a meaningful time frame. And we also look a little bit at some of the information provided, that there is a sufficient level of detail in the budget, and not just, oh, this is the total revenue, this is the total expenditure, right? You have to look at the departmental spending. In oversight, we look at the role of the State Legislative Assembly, whether there's timely budget deliberation before the start of the fiscal year. Since our year starts in January, this means that budget deliberations need to be in October or November and passed 1 month before the start of the fiscal year. We look at the number of sessions and whether handsets are available, so that people have a record of what questions and deliberations are held in the Dewan Undangan Negeri. And we look at Public Accounts Committee records, whether the PAC in the state is active and reports on its activity in scrutinizing state executive activity. Public participation is a new section which we've added. Right now, it is only analysis. It is unscored. We look at the ability of public and civil society to meaningfully participate in the budget process. And right now, it's unscored because we are just collecting information in order to design the questionnaire better in future. So for this, we look at the State Exco and the DUN, whether they offer platforms for public feedback or have any active forms of engagement, such as consultation sessions. And we also look at budget formulation. So this is before the budget, whether people can give suggestions and proposals on the budget, and implementation, which is whether people can give complaints, about budget and programs, and whether it has not, programs are not being implemented or money is not being spent. Okay. So bear with me a little longer before we come to the exciting announcement of the results. What does MyOBI measure? 4 sets of documents, which are actually really 6 documents. And I realize we haven't put here the citizens' budget, which is also measured. As I mentioned, that's the infographic version or easy to understand version for everyone to access the budget information. The executive budget proposal is everything that the state government would have to put up in order to get budget approval. That's the speech, the supply bill, and the estimates of revenue and expenditure. The buku belanjawan, that is the real substance with all the detailed lists of expenditures. And this forms the bulk of the score in MyOBI. The enacted budget, which is after it is authorized, the supply bill becomes a supply enactment or supply ordinance in Sabah and Sarawak. And the year-end report or the financial statements with reporting from the state, and the audit report. Finally, if you just want to understand like the number of questions that we look at, we adapted from Open Budget Survey, which is an international standard, and that is very high. The number of questions there are about 140. Here, we are really looking at the minimum level of publication. So overall, there are 15 scored questions for public availability, 1 for information. Oversight, 5 questions scored, 3 for information and analysis. And for public participation, we asked 6 questions. And we'll also be sharing the methodology later on in a couple of weeks on the website if anyone is interested. So with that, I will now turn us over to Nishal, my colleague, who has collated and analyzed all these scores, and he will let you know what the current state rankings are, as well as go through the results. So Nishal.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa, for that great background and explainer of just what MyOBI is and what it measures. So now I'm sure all of you are wondering, how well did each state do, and what's the performance of each state, and how each state which state performed the best. And I'm happy to announce that for the Malaysia Open Budget Index 2024, that the best performing states are Terengganu and Selangor. So both Terengganu and Selangor scored a joint first place. So I'll show you the scores here. So as you can see that Terengganu and Selangor both got 76 points each. And this is followed by the states of Negeri Sembilan and Perak. So we have divided these states into three groups, which are substantial, minimal, and insufficient disclosure. In substantial disclosure, they are placed as such because the availability of budget documents, like the budget estimates and the year-end report, as explained by Alyssa, and all of these have a very detailed breakdown of state expenses, sometimes down to the unit or program level, which shows that there's a very high level of detail in just how exactly does the state government allocate resources and funding. On minimal disclosure, there's a less detailed level of breakdown, and fewer documents are available. Sometimes the state budget estimates aren't available, and or the state year-end report isn't available. And in red are states with insufficient disclosure. These states have few, if any, details or budget documents available, and the fewest number of documents. So at times, the only budget document available is the budget speech made by the MB or the Chief Minister. So this is the comparison of scores between 2024 and 2022. As you can see, the top four states, which are Terengganu, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, and Perak, remain unchanged. They are the top four from 2022 is still the top four for 2024. However, we also like to note that two states made very substantial improvements since the last MyOBI. And these are the states of Melaka and Sarawak. Melaka jumped from 9th place in 2022 to 5th place in this current MyOBI. And Sarawak jumped from 12th place to 7th in this year's MyOBI. And both states showed that they had real improvements because they both provided more documents that were available, more details were provided in the state budget. And this sort of information that shows that once you do provide that, there's a real improvement in transparency. And these are the documents that we found that were available for each state. And on the plus side, as you can see, most states provided the budget speech. 11 out of 13 states provided the budget speech. And most states provided a citizen's budget, the simplified, more accessible version that highlights programs, the overall expenditure and revenue for each state. And that's provided by 12 out of 13 states. However, on the downside, we note that only one state provided the supply bill and the enacted budget, or the supply enactment, and that is the state of Terengganu. None of the other states provided that. And we also note that when it comes to the scoring earlier, all of the states that did the best, the top four, all provided detailed budget estimates, which is also known as the buku budget or buku belanjawan. And this provided detailed insights and breakdowns on state government revenue, expenditures, programs that are planned, and priorities done by the state government. So our key findings are that so far, on average, there is minimal budget disclosure. And as we can see from the documents availability earlier, half of the states don't provide their budget estimates, and few, if any, states provide the enacted budget and supply bill. And the best performing states, as I explained earlier, provided a detailed breakdown of expenditures as provided in the Buku Budget, Buku Belanjawan, and the estimates of expenditure and revenue. And states that performed below average only had a partial publication of the EBP, which is the documents like the budget speech, the expenditures of revenue. So, for example, some states only publish this budget speech, but not the expenditures of revenue. So, what do we recommend from this, from our findings? We recommend that state governments should ensure that the budget documents are not just published in a timely manner, but made fully accessible to the public. There should be no restrictions to accessing these documents. And that especially the estimates of revenue and expenditure. This document, also the Buku Belanjawan and Buku Budget, should be made available to the public so that the public has a detailed and informed understanding of just how the state government is allocating resources, sources of revenue, the sort of programs that are being funded by the state government, and that the state government should make the supply bill and the enacted budget available to the public so that the public can know, okay, this is the bill that was brought to the DUN to be voted on, and this is the actual budget that was passed by the DUN, and we see if there's any differences and what exactly was voted on. State governments should also publish the year-end reports to show actual spending and revenue, and not just that, they should show the outcomes of that spending in their reports. So it shows the state government spent X million on this program. What is the outcome of that spending, and what can be made better in the following budget? So these are our oversight scores, which looks at things like the timeliness of budget tabling, when the budget is tabled or passed, the number of DUN sessions, availability of handsets, and information on important committees like the Public Accounts Committee or PAC. So as you can see, the states of Selangor, Terengganu, and Sabah are the states that scored the top in this, but this is not ranked because there's a few questions. And these are the number of DUN sitting days, number of days that the DUN sit for each state. And as you can see, the states of Selangor, Sarawak, and Johor had the most number of sitting days. Selangor is at first with 21 days, while the state with the fewest is Perlis with 8. So there has been a substantial increase in the number of days compared to 2021, but that's because of the impact of COVID restrictions in 2021. So because of that, the number of days has rebounded back since the lifting of these restrictions. Our key findings is that overall, the oversight capabilities of the DUNs remains weak, and there is much room for improvement. The DUN sits for a relatively low number of days compared to the federal Dewan Rakyat, and that could also be explained by the relative centralization of powers in the federal government. And we also found that information on things like the key committees, like the PAC, is currently lacking. So, for example, on the details of meetings by the PAC and what has been discussed in those meetings, only Selangor has provided that information, that level of information. Some states only provide the list of members of the PAC, and that's about it. And some states don't provide this information at all. So this information has to be made available to the public to ensure that there is a level of transparency and accountability to the general public. So we recommend that the Hansards for each state assembly should be made available to the public online, and those Hansards should be up to date with each Dun sitting. And this is to ensure that the public knows what is being debated and discussed in the Dun, what bills are being passed in the Dun, and so that the public will know what is going on in their state assemblies. And as well as that, the PAC records should be kept up to date. This doesn't just include who are the members of the PAC, but records of what has been discussed, what are the reports that the PAC discusses, so that there will be greater accountability. So last but not least, we have public participation. This measures mechanisms that allow for meaningful, informed public participation in the state budget process, whether it's at the start, at the budget formulation stage, or during the implementation of the budget itself, after the budget has been passed. So what we have found is that by and large, there are few mechanisms, if any, for the general public or for civil society to participate in the state budget process. And these measures include things like online forms for the general public to make suggestions, to make known their priorities and make proposals to the state governments, like what is going on now at the federal level with Budget 2025, and to submit complaints and comments on the budget. So we found that only 4 states have done this, and that only 2 states, which are Negeri Sembilan and Pahang, have done so for both the formulation and the implementation stage. On top of that, here is the availability of Hansards. So as you can see that 9 out of 13 states provide the Hansards, which is good. But also special note on Sarawak. Sarawak is interesting because according to the official Dun website, the Hansards are taken down 1 month after the end of the previous sitting. If you want to access the Hansards for previous sittings before that, you would have to call Unit Penerbitan to get access to those Hansards. On another positive note, we're happy to see that a lot of states, virtually all states, provide live streams of the Dun sittings. This is so that you can tune in live and see, okay, what are my Duns discussing? What is going on in the state assembly? And while virtually all states provide live streams, the states of Johor and Pahang only live stream their state budget speech. Ordinary Dun sitting days aren't streamed live for these states. And we also note that the favorite platform for the state governments to stream the Dun sittings are Facebook, and only about half use both Facebook and YouTube. Just for your information. So our key findings is that there really are relatively few mechanisms that allow for meaningful, informed public participation in the state budget process, and that should be reinforced with more mechanisms and more opportunities for the public to participate. The streaming of the Dun sittings allow the public to tune in live and watch and observe matters being debated and what is being voted on in the Dun. And states that do provide the Hansards should also ensure that those Hansards are complete and up to date, and of course readily accessible to the public. Our recommendations for this are that there should be mechanisms for the public and for civil society to provide feedback during both the budget formulation at the start of the budget process and during the implementation of the budget. Public forums and meetings to disseminate budget information should be held, And this will be done to facilitate two-way dialogue between both the representatives of the state government and the general public and civil society, so that you can directly inform representatives from the state government what are your priorities, what proposals you have, and what are your needs directly to the state government. And on top of that, there should be select committees with the power to summon state civil servants and convene hearings with citizens and civil society, so that they can provide feedback and also sort of give comment to the state civil servants. And yes. So that has been it. If you want to check out the results and find out more from our in-depth report, you can scan the QR code or go to this shortened link, bit.ly/MyOBI2024. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa and Nishal, for the presentation. Now, our Ideas Secretariat will be distributing the updated copy of our report. Feel free to take one to keep. To start our panel discussion, I would like to invite to the stage the moderator, Ms. Sri Muniarti Yusof, Chief Operating Officer and Senior Director of Research of Ideas Malaysia. Esteemed panelists, YB Michelle Ng, Ms. Zirawati Kadir, and Alyssa Rode. Uni, over to you.
Thank you, Charanya. I hope everyone is excited as I am seeing the results. And I'm very happy, just realized today that the panels are all women, which is usually unusual, usually men, but we all know woman panel. So first of all, I'm Sri Murniati. So I'll be your moderator today. And we have 3 speakers. Alisa, which is our senior manager. YB Michelle Ng, I think everyone knows her. He's a member of the Parliamentary Account Committee in Selangor and also Adun for Subang Jaya. And the third speaker today, our panel, is Puan Zirawati Kadir. He is the National Audit Department Selangor, the director. Puan Zirawati has been in the National Audit Department since 1995. But before that, he was also internal auditor to several ministries, KKM, KDN, and BINDEF. She's also a member of Malaysian Institute of Accountants. So we will have about 1 hour discussion today. I will ask a few questions to the speakers, and I will leave probably about 30 to 40 minutes at the end of the Q&A session to all of you to ask questions as well. First of all, I think let's congratulate Selangor and also Terengganu for making the first to the top place for the Malaysian Open Budget Index. I think it's an achievement which we hope to continue in the future, and other states, especially those with minimum disclosure, or the final one, the disclosure that is not so good, can improve themselves. I also want again to congratulate our partners, and I think most importantly, our reviewers. I think the researchers forgot to mention that in addition to the partners, the survey is also being reviewed by other experts or other civic-minded individuals who ensure that the answers given by the partners, also by ideas, are actually correct. And also we invited state governments to review the result. Unfortunately, only Terengganu actually reviewed the result. So we thank you for State of Terengganu for doing that. So let me start the discussion today. I think the first question I would like to ask the two speakers here on the, I think, overall reaction to the result. And how do you see, I mean, of course, Alisa talks about the importance of transparency. Do you see the importance as well? I think, do you agree with our ideas that this is something important to do? I think, please, YB or maybe Puan Zirawati dulu?
Baik, salam sejahtera, selamat pagi. I know it's a little bit sleepy because the room is a little bit dark, but we hope that this session will liven things up a little bit. Before we go into my reaction, I just want to congratulate Ideas for putting this together. I think it's something that's so meaningful and serves as such a good platform for us as state governments to perform self-examination and also serves as a guide on the areas of improvement that we should implement. On my end, even at the Dune level, what I personally try to do is to publish how I have used my allocation to the public, because I believe in that level of accountability. And for every project kecil that we do, even though it's kecil, between 20,000 and 50,000 ringgit, we will always do a press conference to announce how much was actually spent for each project. So on a personal level, I absolutely welcome this. And I hope that the media picks up on this. I just got Trisha's media statement, which she has forwarded to me, because this is something that the public needs to know. And my hope is that we all the states will improve. Because as you can see, even for Selangor, even though we did tie with Terengganu and come out as top, more public accountability is definitely something that is welcome, and we need to constantly work towards too. So to have these very clear metrics on what is expected and what else we need to do is very helpful. And in the age of internet, all these are actually very, very easy to do. Right? I suspect that for Sarawak, the example of the handsets might be because of storage issues. So government has to spend a little bit to buy more storage. But beyond that, it is very, very easily implementable. So again, kudos to all of you, and thank you so much for putting so much effort into this. I think the team and all the partners deserve another round of applause.
So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia Madani. To me, based on the finding presented by Alicia just now, what I can say, to say that I'm shocking, not really. To say that I'm not shocked, also not really. Okay, because knowing that the disclosure of the disclosure by state government normally is based on the voluntary basis and what the best practice. So the extent of the disclosure is normally depends on the state itself. Whether they want to share the information with the public or not, it depends. Depends the state lah. But since there are no rules and regulation also, so maybe they feel, as Michelle mentioned just now, they need storage, maybe they need extra cost to publish everything. So maybe there are limitations for certain state. That's why they cannot share the information with the public. But again, since they are not bound by any rules and regulations, so it's up to the state to disclose all the reports as mentioned in the findings. But for myself personally, okay, I am totally agreed with the MyOBI as to determine the transparency of the state government in sharing the documentations, because to me, with this platform, public can access all the information regarding how the money spends, how the money spends, in what projects, in what program, and to the what extent of the performance. So to me, it's a good platform for us as a public to evaluate the performance of the government, or the state government or federal government, and to see the the achievement of the implementation of the project, and also the allocation of the funds. Thank you.
I think I will ask question first to YB Michelle. One of the things that highlighted, I think, is the limited budget oversight, especially, I think, the number of sitting for DUN, right? Anything that we can, I think Nishal has I highlight some of the ideas to improve the oversight. One of the things that we feel something that can be done is actually, can we increase the number of days? Is it possible at all to increase the number of days? And I think secondly, would it be possible to have DUN select committees? Because I think in federal level, we have parliamentary select committees. But do we have such platform at the state level where committees discuss matters pertaining to the state? Please, YB.
So the question is, can you increase the number of sittings, and can you have select committees? Yes, you can increase the number of days, but the unique thing about, at least Selangor, I'm not sure about other states because I've not looked into their standing orders, is the number of days is actually prescribed in the standing orders. So up until the last term, Selangor can only have 4 days of budget debates. So that's prescribed, right? So that's a legacy issue that we have inherited. If you want to change the standing order, it's a very laborious process where you have to propose it in the state assembly. Then the matter will be sent back to the select committee on standing orders, where together with the PUU, Pegawai Undang-Undang, they will look at how to amend it, right? Then only it will be brought back to the state assembly for readings, debates, and approval. So the entire process takes about a year, but it's not impossible because we have done more drastic changes in the past in Selangor, especially with regards to COVID-19 and having online sittings. So Selangor is one of the few states that can do that. So long story short, Ken, where there's a will, there's a way. And from 4 days, Selangor in the last term increased the number of days to now 6 days. All right. And on Fridays, we used to end at 5 o'clock. So now that has also been extended to, I think, 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So that's meaningful because more time means more opportunity for issues to be debated. And it all came about because of state assemblymen like us that will often make a lot of noise in our WhatsApp group when the length of time for debate, on the first day you get 15 minutes, on the second day you get 10 minutes, and towards the end if you get 2 minutes, it's already considered very good, right? So it depends on the mood of the speaker, and we're like, hey, cannot, I mean, it's the budget, isn't it? So we're very grateful that those amendments have taken place, and it has given sufficient time so far for us to bring up any and every issue with regards to the budget. So that's one. Number two, select committees can be established in the state. This was something done in Selangor in 2013. So all you have to do is amend the standing orders to prescribe what committees you want, permanent committees, and what we call special select committees. So in Selangor, we have 9 select committees, including the Public Accounts Committee. Some of the more what we call powerful committees are, for example, JP Abbas, which looks into, Abbas stands for Agency Badan Berkanun and Anak Syarikat. So you can call up all documents, any witnesses, and you can call up hearings for any issues that are pressing, right? So as a state assemblyman, what I also can do is I can write a letter to the chairman of that select committee and say, this issue is happening, right? Please look into it. So we are doing that later today in JP InfraGrow, actually. So I'm the chairman of InfraGrow, which looks into infrastructure, agriculture, mobility, and also water. So we're doing that for YB Rajiv. We've just gotten a letter from him. But that said, the establishment of select committees can also be improved. What we are trying to push for now are 2 things. The first is for the handsets of select committees to also be published so that we increase the quality of discussions that take place, and the public can also keep track as to whether your adun who is a member of that select committee are attending those meetings or not. And number two, we want to push for more select committees to allow live streaming. So now only CELCAT, which is the Select Committee on Accountability and Integrity, is live stream. The rest of the select committees, the chairman can allow the public to sit, but that's at the discretion of the chairman, and live streaming is not mandatory. So it's in the works. Hopefully, with public support, we'll be able to get this through as well, and maybe ideas can also play a role. Yeah.
The select committee meeting, is it included in the number of days of student sitting, or is it separate?
It's entirely separate.
It's separate, okay. So can you tell us like how many days in a year for select committee, at least the one that you attended? Do you remember?
So the one that I chair in the last term, we have one meeting every 2 weeks. We're probably and it depends on the type of issue that you are investigating. You can increase it to once a week, but that also depends on the availability of your members, because you do need quorum in order to convene the meeting. Some select committees don't convene at all,
Oh, okay.
so it's at the discretion of the chairman lah.
Okay. And we can find these records in the parliamentary website, the number of days of sitting
For Parliament, I'm not sure, but
for the select committee.
for Selangor, no. So that is why we are pushing for it to be published.
Thank you, YB. I think just one more questions, I think, before going to Puan Zirawati. I think since we're talking about public participation, in your case, in the oversight of the legislative, how can you as a member of parliament inform the public in the budget oversight? What would be, I mean, Nishal talks a little bit on recommendation on how to involve the public, but maybe you can tell us, based on your experience, to what extent, say, petition from a member of the public or any recommendation or anything, or how can you involve us in your budget oversight role? Thank you.
So as you can see from the report, Selangor doesn't have a formal platform for public participation, and it's largely done through your representative, which is your state assemblyman, which may or may not represent the entire constituency, right? So that is something that can be proposed, and in fact, can be done and has been done before during Tan Sri Khalid's time as Menteri Besar, where the model then was to visit every district and to get public participation, public feedback then. Right now, if any proposals were to be brought to the State Assembly, the way it would be done is very traditional and conventional, which is to lobby in silo, which means that you go and talk to as many people as possible who will be able to bring your cause, including the Menteri Besar, including the EXCO in charge, including your ADUN, including NGOs, gather enough momentum and force, and hopefully you'll be able to see that done. And for ADUNs, that's by and large how you can ensure that what you propose succeeds. So for ADUNs, we do have engagement with the Menteri Besar before the budget is tabled together with agencies. So it's separate days. It's like a setup like this. We all come together, the mic is there, and then we are given an opportunity to propose. But in a setting where it's a 1-2 hour session, you can imagine that only so much gets done. You can't isolate it from lobbying outside as well to ensure a certain level of success in what you want to do. So that's something that we did for 2 policies that we now see implemented in Selangor, which is the legal aid fund that came about because of COVID, and we saw many people who were retrenched and families that were caught in administrative problems because they couldn't afford going to court, right? And also the mental health, online mental health platform. Still a lot of room for improvement, but at least there was a fund that was prescribed for mental health and it was used properly. So we saw that success because we got the buy-in of the EXCOs. And so they raised it in MMKM, which is the Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri that happens every week on a Wednesday. And when you do that, when you have more people on board, it's more likely that you will be able to see your proposal become a reality.
Well, some initiative in the past, which hopefully can be revived by Selangor and also others. Lisa, do you have any comments on this based on other countries' experience, probably on public participation?
Yeah, so based on what we've collected whether states have done any jelajah, we couldn't really find much documentation of like in-person town halls. So as far as our evidence is concerned, it has not happened in the states. Besides what YB Michelle said, like aduns may individually go out and meet their constituents, but that doesn't count as a formal and institutionalized public participation mechanism. The states that we recorded is really just like the online like public feedback form or link. And what is really good practice, I think for a start, you can look at federal practice because MOF has quite involved public participation and engagements. And one simple way to start besides the online platform is to have town halls or dialogues. Even if you don't go to every district, just have a few that are open, have an agenda, state which topics that the state is willing to receive proposals and feedback on for budget, and then report back whether those proposals are accepted. So closing the loop is also important so that people know that the participation was meaningful. You cannot accept everything, but at least you show that some things were listened to, right? So this is for a start. Yeah.
I think that's something that we propose to federal government as well, because they do a lot of consultation, but the reports on what being taken, how many who attended, sometimes are not being published, right? I think recently there's some publication, but it should be improved even at the federal level. I think let's move on to a little bit on audit report. As I think if you saw the slide before, auditor report all published. And of course, it's thanks to the National Audit Department. It's not a state doing. It's a doing of the Auditor General, the National Audit Department. I think we recently had a big discussions on Auditor General report due to some controversies in one of the agencies. But I think we only know the result, right? Audit reports out. But I think let's just hear from Puan Zirawati the labor process behind it, the difficult process of getting this report out. Maybe Puan, maybe you can share us your work and how actually the process of auditing, especially at the state level, and also challenges, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, maybe I will divide my explanations into 4 stages. Starting with the what you call planning stage. Okay, normally under the planning stage, okay, this is the stage where we have to prepare our annual audit plan. Okay, in Malay we call RAT, Rancangan Audit Tahunan. Okay, RAT, not RAT. Okay, so in the process to set our RAT for next year, for next year. So this year we have to starting gather information. Okay, normally the team will come up with an overview about any project, any program under the budget announcement. Then once we have the overview report, we have a session with the top management from HQ. Involve our Timbalan Ketua Audit Negara, also Ketua Audit Negara. Okay, normally in that session we will present, we will discuss, and we will defend our topic for next year auditing. Okay, in this process, of course, expectation for top management, they expect you gather information as you macam you dah buat audit tu. Padahal you just overview saja, you tak dapat the details information, right? But the expectation from the top management, you must have a complete overviews to make sure this is the topic that you will do auditing for next year. So that's the awal-awal you dah ada the tough part on the penyediaan rancangan audit tahunan. Okay, and then the second stage on the implementation. Okay, so this implementation normally we involve the field audit. But before we starting our audit, we will having a meeting we call entrance conference with the auditee, to to exchange information from our side and from their sides. Normally, in this session, we request them to give a briefing on the program or the project that we will audit. Okay, and also in that session, we will explain to them what our objectives, our sample, our scope, and everything lah, for both parties to get involved in this auditing. In our audit field, okay, we involve the documentation review. We having a discussion with the officer involved, and also we have the site visit. Okay, normally this is the three method that we applied in doing our auditing. After normally it will takes about 2 to 3 months, okay, to settle everything. And after that, before we say goodbye to our auditee, we will having a brief discussion with them just to inform auditee that what are the findings, within 3 months that we collect from our auditing. So this process just to make sure that they will prepare early feedback. Because maybe after 2 weeks, we will come up with the observation letter for them to give a feedback within 2 weeks. Normally 14 days lah. Okay, and then we have a exit conference with them, discuss with all the finding. And the third stage is on the reporting and tabling report in the parliament. Okay, in this process, okay, normally we will prepare a draft LAKAN. LAKAN stand for Laporan Ketua Audit Negara. So I mentioned LAKAN. Okay, we prepare the draft LAKAN for each tajuk yang kita dah pilih sebentar tadi yang kita laksanakan auditan. And this draft will be reviewed by committee in the HQ level. So actually we have a three committee to review our draft because we have to make sure the report is, in terms of quality, in terms of and in the issues that will be reported in the laporan Ketua Negara should be watertight. Okay, after the district committee, then our Ketua Negara will approve the draft LAKAN. After that, we will send a confirmatory letter to the auditee just to make sure, because we need to avoid dispute after that. So that's why we send the CL, we call CL, confirmatory letter to auditees to confirm all the facts in that report. Then we table in the parliament. Okay, and the last stage we call monitoring process. Monitoring process normally we refer to AG dashboard. Okay, so all the issues in the laporan Ketua Negara will key in the dashboard, and we have one department to monitor the status of the issues that we key in the AG dashboard. Okay, that was the process. But the challenging, of course, to get the data and information in time, because we have a limit time in doing our auditing. Normally, we have 6 months, but 6 months in up to publish report. So actually, the field work is starting from January up to April. After that, we have prepared the draft LAKAN. So these 4 months, field work is about 3 months. So this is challenging because if you don't have a good cooperation with the auditee, then it's very difficult to get the documentation to support all your findings. Because even you have if you feel this is okay, this is a good issues, but because you don't have supporting document, you don't have enough or sufficient bukti to defend your issues, then you have to drop the issues. That's the problem, because you cannot prove the things happen. That's why once the laporan Ketua Negara table in the parliament, very seldom ada dispute from agencies.
Yang baru ni?
Ya, dia baru. Okay, that one. Maybe it's anything yang
So I think that I believe I have a lot of questions in my head to Puan Sirawati. I believe all of you have many questions as well. Do you want to ask question now, or let me ask one final question to the three? But this is in regards to the revenue, the size of the revenue of the state. I think it's very important because I think there has been a lot of requests in the past few months from the state government to actually increase the share of revenue. I think Penang asked for increase of state tax revenue. Sabah and Sarawak asked for more. And of course, Terengganu has been disputing the oil revenue. So maybe, Alisa, maybe you can give us a little bit overview on what are the demands as well as what are the current revenue that the states have compared to the federal government. And whether this request is justified. I will ask YB Michelle as well on that one.
Okay. So just to sketch out first, the distribution of revenues is outlined in the Constitution. Okay, it's in Schedule 9, I think. So it's a schedule in the Constitution, and federal gets all the income tax revenues, personal and corporate. And the states have a very small share of revenues which come from like land, right? The assessment tax, so use of land, forestry, mining is very natural resources heavy. And because developed land, like urban land, right? Like maybe you can give a higher assessment rate than agricultural land. That also becomes an issue now when we think about, food security and climate change. Kedah, some MPs, have been asking, well, is Kedah going to be compensated for being the rice bowl of Malaysia, right? We want to go industrial. They will get more money that way. Penang, a large contributor to federal GDP and tax because of the industry there and E&E. Recently asked for 20% tax share revenue so that they can continue developing the state and continue that growing that contribution, right? And then shortly after, Johor asked for 30% tax share. Sarawak and Sabah get special grants, which they have been seeking to revise, and there have even been groups and the state government taking federal to court over that, suing for the revision. And then finally, all royalties, also a pain point for the East Coast states, particularly Terengganu, where the royalty is it's not recognized as a royalty, it's recognized as Wang Ihsan, or like a goodwill grant, because the federal government passed a law to state that any oil more than 3 miles off the continental shelf, right, is considered federally owned. So whatever transfers Terengganu gets, and Terengganu is the state that is most dependent on federal transfers, more than 80% of its revenue comes from federal transfers, is at the behest of federal. So with all these issues, how much is state revenue actually? Our calculations from 2018 to 2022 as a percentage of what federal revenues has as a ratio is 12.6% compared to federal, the size of federal revenue. Okay, state expenditures, 8%. Compared to federal expenditures, and 2024 budget, what that means. Okay, state allocations, the total was 32 billion ringgit. Federal allocation, the total 394 billion ringgit. Okay, so that's just a picture of how small state revenues and expenditures are. And so states that want to do more and play an active role in developing economic development and pushing that, or giving more services and service delivery to their constituents, facing constraints. So I think that's where a lot of this disgruntlement is coming from.
So, Michelle, is given the limited power or authority by the constitutions, you have this, there's a list, federal list and state list. do you think increased revenue justified here? Increase more money allocation is justified.
So I think there's a difference between revenue and allocation. Revenue is how much the state can generate independently of federal government. Allocation is what the federal government gives to the state. For Selangor, we are the biggest GDP contributor. So if we want to make noise, also can, actually. We contribute 322 billion in terms of GDP to the state, but we only receive an equivalent of 0.2% of our GDP contribution from the federal government. So we also have basis to complain. But if we take a very term approach, so term approach, that means I'm looking only at just the next election, right? Then our conversation will always be embroiled in how much can I get from federal government, how much can I get from federal government. I think the discussion has to move towards how can I be independent of federal government allocations, because the essence of federal government allocation, the way it is structured now is, Selangor, we get less, actually one of the least, right? Because we are seen to be able to be rather independent of the federal government in terms of revenue. So why other states get more is because it's seen as a way to bridge the disparity gap. So if I give you more, you should be using that money to develop your state. And so we would be able to reduce that development gap. But if you go down to the ground, the reality is very different, right? Selangor, NKL, and places like Penang and Negeri Sembilan also are seen to be more developed, although we have a smaller share of federal allocations, which tells you that this doesn't work, right? So if it doesn't work, there's no point in pursuing this line of argument anymore. We need to talk about how can we devolve more powers and jurisdiction to the states so that they can be creative and think of different ways to diversify their revenue streams away from land, because land is a finite resource, and this is an impending problem for Selangor. If we don't deal with this problem, then we will not be able to sustain our budget. And when we can't sustain our budget, all of you here are very clever, you know the trickle-down effect, right? So within the limited scope of what we have, Selangor is trying to look into it. As of this year, we are introducing a new revenue stream where we will be installing meters to all premises that discharge water, industrial premises, and we will be charging that based on tariff, right? And the idea is the more you discharge, the more you pollute, the more you pay. It's called the polluters pay principle. So that we move industries towards zero discharge policy, and they would invest more in recycling their water, which is better for the environment, gives us cleaner water, makes everyone healthier, makes Selangor better, right? So that is the idea. So that's something new. Another idea that has come forward within our limited scope is looking at carbon credits. We're talking a lot about climate change. Carbon credits it's a big hole in itself. It's a never-ending hole, right? How do you define it and how do you ensure that it stays where it is? Because you're talking about trees remaining where it is, which literally can disappear at any given moment, but that is a separate discussion. But how do you quantify it? How do you inventorize it? And how do you attach a value to it? Because, for example, in Malaysia, we want to attract a lot of data centers, and data centers emit a lot of carbon. So how do you strike a balance between that development and moving away from the traditional way of obtaining revenue from forestry, which is through logging and through mining, right? So that is something that we are looking into. The discussion has been very long and very drawn out for good reason because it's very technical. But those are things that states can be very creative in finding additional sources of revenue if given the opportunity. But beyond that, that's pretty much all you can do lah. So I'm one of the advocates for devolving more power. Of course, it's not an easy thing to do because you have to amend the federal constitution and parliament, 2/3 of parliament have to agree to it. But for sustainability, and if we adopt a more generational thinking away from a term-based thinking, this is something that Malaysia has to do. Otherwise, states are going to be irrelevant over time, and that's the reality.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Do you want to comment on that?
No, I just wanted to clarify, since YB Michelle brought it up, that the state revenue numbers that I quoted, 8% compared to federal revenue, includes the intergovernmental transfer. So if you take that out, then the actual state revenue, the percentage is much
even
lower.
lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about what, 6%? 6%?
It will be less than that, but I don't have that specific number here. But also, it's true, Selangor has the least amount of dependency on intergovernmental transfer. Our average here is 9.6%.
I think I will open up the floor now. I mean, I have some questions for Puan Zirawati, but I think I will save it for later. But I think I will invite everyone here to ask questions. Gentlemen here, let's collect the question first before Puan here. Hold on ya, hold on. Satu, dua, ada sebelah sini? Sebelah paling kanan? Tak ada. Okay, dua dulu, and I will invite everyone to. Okay, sir, please.
Yes, good morning to a distinguished panel. My name is Joseph. The question which I
A little bit wonky. Boleh kuat sikit? Boleh.
good morning to a distinguished panel. My name is Joseph. The question which I wish to pose is how realizable are the states with regard to the state debts? Example is Sabah. I think there was a provision for about 50 billion.
Can we change the?
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wish to pose a question with regard to the state debts. How realizable are the states towards their debts? The example is Sabah, where there was a provision for 50 billion to the Sabah Development Bank. And some of the GLCs are not honoring their liabilities. So how realizable are the states with regard to the state debts? Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum. Tiny from Lestari. From what I gather, access to information is very, very important. I think personally, you said there is a tie between Terengganu and Selangor. I think on the freedom of information enactment, I think Selangor will be number one. Okay, anyway. The Dewan Negeri or the state assemblies throughout Malaysia is very important. We are quite concerned that there is no uniformity, because in the global world, the parliamentarians or the parliaments, they have like the IPU, Interparliamentary Union. Maybe in Malaysia, we should have a collaboration or some kind of collaboration so that this isomorphism of legislative bodies can transform. Yeah, I think that is a suggestion.
Thank you.
I believe that in the early Pakatan Rakyat's administration, there was a collaboration of Johor and Selangor. So if you see the websites of both Johor and Dewan Negeri Selangor, they are quite very, very excellent, I must say, compared to the others. So I'm very interested to know from their findings, because what do you mean by there is no bill, no supply bill exposed to the public? Could you give a little bit more detail on that?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's answer these two first, and then I will invite more to come. YB Michelle, you want to talk about that issue? And also, Puan, if you want to have some comments on that too.
I think the realizability of a state's debt has to be taken on a case-by-case basis because if you will, credit ratings of each state are very, very different given their resources. So I've not looked into the case of Sabah, I'll be very honest with you. It's a very interesting example. 50 billion is a lot, and rightly, if you're Sabahan, I too would be worried. At the end of the day, aside from resources, it also falls upon how well the people you put in power are managing this money, because you can be given very little but do wonders with it, or you can have a lot but mismanage it. So I think there's so many variabilities. It's very difficult to say that it's due to one cause or the other, but the long and short of it is the realizability. It can be realized, and it really largely depends on how the people, number one, manages their resources. So I leave that to you to assess in the case of Sabah, whether those two components are in order and how well they are managing it. But certainly for Selangor, it's something that we take very, very seriously. Your state assemblymen who are backbenchers, don't even have to go so far to the opposition themselves, are very critical about this debt issue. And so far, we are quite pleased to say that in Selangor, things have remained under control. So not much cause to be worried for. For other states, I dare not say too much lah. Yeah, but it really depends on a case-by-case basis.
One.
I'm looking at the audit perspective, okay? I cannot comment on other states because I'm in charge on Selangor only. Okay, for talking about debts in Selangor, normally the debts from government state giving to the agencies for PBTs and also for anak syarikat. And what I can tell you that, of course, some of the PBT agencies and the anak syarikat, they will pay back according to the schedule. But some of the agencies, anak syarikat and PBT, they don't have a, I mean, they cannot pay, yeah. They cannot pay. So for these cases, normally government have to reschedule the loan. And some of it, they have to hapus kira. So this one, normally we will highlight in our exit conference with the kerajaan negeri in terms of what are their actions, because instead, by right, okay, they better give grant to PBT, okay, to operate, because you give pinjaman, after that you reschedule, you hapus kira, so towards the end, still you don't get anything. So I mean, that's my, from audit perspective, that's what I can tell about government debt. Okay, thank you.
Maybe Puan, just a little bit. My understanding is state bodies, state agencies, statutory bodies, can they borrow other than to the state governments? Can they borrow from regular markets?
Cannot.
Even anak syarikat?
Yeah,
Cannot.
Yeah.
But in your experience, has there been any breaches of these rules? Suddenly anak syarikat siapa ke dia
so far we
pinjam
don't
kat
see,
mana-mana?
we don't find any issues regarding that, because if you are talking about whether the anak syarikat did borrow from somewhere else, that one is beyond our control, because we are not auditing the anak syarikat in terms of financial statement. So this one we only see in the state government statement. We see that okay, they receive all the anak syarikat, PBTs and agencies, they receive the loan from the government. Beyond that, I cannot comment.
That's beyond audit. Okay, so I think the second question has not been answered. I think that one for you, Alisa. The supply bill. Why is like all X, right? All
Oh yeah,
are not
supply
published.
bill. Yeah, so the supply bill, just like the supply bill at federal level, would be the list of the total amount, right, that goes to each, at federal level, what goes to each ministry, at state level, what goes to each state department, or for Sabah and Sarawak, also ministries. And this is the main allocations that are authorized by the legislature. So once that is authorized, it cannot change. You cannot say, oh, I reallocate, from Jabatan Saliran Air to some other Jabatan. And that's why it's important, because it shows exactly what has been authorized, right? And a lot of states don't provide this. Normally, it is the Dewan Undangan Negeri, the legislature, that would put it up on their website. Parliament would put it up as a bill, and then a bill that has been passed. So this is something that's missing a lot. And people maybe think it's not important, right? But it is the public's only record that this budget was properly authorized. And what was the final approval, right? Because if your debate is meaningful, there might have been amendments. So you need both the supply bill and the supply enactment. I think on interparliamentary union, I think, Rosaini, your question is like, should there be something similar among the states, right? To then maybe discuss improvements to state legislature oversight or standing orders and procedures. I think that's a great idea. It's actually something that, ideas would love to do. We've wanted to build a caucus, of ADUN from across states who are interested in improving democracy and governance. So that, I think, is something that hopefully, if there are ADUNs who are supportive, we can get together, start small, but just start with creating a group that is interested in improving practice.
So basically, not many state DUN website publish the supply bill. Okay.
And some DUNs don't have their own website. It's just the state government website, and then there's one page or few pages that are, for the DUN to put up information.
Maybe Misha, why is it so difficult for the DUN to just publish it? Sorry.
It's not difficult. I'm just checking because we do have a enactment tab. It's just that for some reason it's not updated. So later I'll be going to the State Assembly. I'll just mention it to the State Secretary to update it. It's not difficult at all because we do have a digital copy. So it's a matter of just uploading the PDF.
Any other questions on overall state budget matters, or even on the results of the survey? If no more, okay. One more question, and I have other questions. So please, Puan.
Okay, still on the Legislative State Assembly, I think one of the key player, or you want to call that, is the Setiausaha Dewan Negeri, or like in Johor they call it Jurutulis. So they play a very important role in reforming Dewan Negeri throughout Malaysia. So if you have a very people-oriented Setiausaha Dewan, fortunately I have talked to several, one of them in Selangor, and I think Selangor has got a very listening Setiausaha Dewan Negeri, and I think she has made, it's a she, I'm very proud of that, made quite important reformation, and one of them is to electronically record all the handset from the inception of the Selangor Dewan Negeri to now. I think, to me, I feel when I watch quite a number of sidang-sidang Dewan, especially in Selangor, there are a lot of repetitive issues, and which need not be continually debated because it's already there in the handset. Thank you.
Yes, I went to parliamentary library. It's all the proceedings are all there, right? If it's digitized, it would be great. So it can be a reference to ADUN, right? Thank you so much for that. I think I have one question before we close. We have 10 minutes. Oh, you have one question too. This has question, but I have question for Puan Zirawati, which is a continuation. Let me ask questions and then you ask your question. But the question on public participation, you mentioned the four stages of audit. I think what we want to know, is there anything that public can give input in during those four processes? Hold on your thought. Let me give the floor to Tricia.
Thanks, Uni, and thank you for the panel. I just wanted to follow up on the question that Uni posed on whether states or state anak syarikat GLCs can actually borrow or raise funds. So we know that that's not within the purview of the audit, the National Audit Department. But we do know that actually state GLCs of several states have actually borrowed, means they raise funds subject to the approval of the federal government. So the federal government will receive that application, they approve it. And I mentioned in my opening remarks that our project doesn't cover that, right? Because we cover strictly what's in the budget. So I think I wanted maybe some comments from YB Michelle and maybe Puan Zirawati on how we can improve accountability of things that are not strictly within the budget. Any ideas any ideas of what we can do from the outside to help promote better transparency of these off-budget entities? And maybe from Puan Zirawati, of course we know audit is strictly speaking only what the state spends on, but is there any way that the audit department can be brought in to audit these entities, maybe at the request of the Dewan or the state government? Thank you.
Good to touch on the recently amended Audit Act as well. So please, Puan Zirawati.
Thank you very much. Okay, maybe yeah, Michelle. Okay, okay. Michelle talking about the new amendment for Act audit. Okay, recently lulus by I mean July, luluskan, but belum dikuatkuasakan. Okay, but maybe I can explain what are the new things under the pindaan of the Akta Audit 1957. Okay, the most important is the follow the public money. Okay, under the follow the public money, there's no restriction for audit negara to go to any entities, whether you corporation, whether you pertubuhan, you club, whatever. You are entitled to be audit if you receive any grants, any loans, any guarantee from government, doesn't matter state or federal government. So that is the biggest, not to say biggest powers lah under Ketua Audit Negara, but the new things to expand the power of the Ketua Audit Negara, but that cannot be our routine audit. That one cannot put under our rancangan audit tahunan because that one is based on request or by Ministry of Finance. Then we can audit. So even though the power is quite big, you can access to any entities, but still we are not abusing our power. Okay, all right. Maybe anything, yeah.
Private entities.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Any club, as long as you register under the ROB, ROC, SC, then you are entitled to be audited. But of course, this is still news, and actually we need engagement, yeah, with all the agencies involved, state, any identities, and that one is under MOF. Yeah.
my question, the public involvement in the 4 stages.
Okay, talking about the process just now, you are welcome to give any information to Audit Negara, whether through complaints, through any source of, any form of information that you need to give us, because all your informations will help us, okay, to select what are the programs or projects that we need to be auditing. Because once we normally we have the criteria for select the audit topics, but because we cannot simply go to the project which we know that the project is okay, so no point. Okay, normally we will find out the program yang ada masalah, and we are welcome. Be our good informer, be our IN here, and be anything to us, be a good rakyat to the government by providing us this information. So this is one of the sumber that we need when we come up with our rancangan audit tahunan.
I think both YB, Michelle, and Alisa, if you want to talk about the off budget and how can we actually improve it. That will be our final questions. I'm going to close the floor by now. We're going to go for lunch. But yeah, please.
Yeah, off-budget expenditure has always been one of the pain points in Malaysia. And why it's off-budget it's because it's not part of your budget, but the source comes from the state and then you spend it, but it's not subject to audit. So with the recent amendment in the Audit Act, it has rendered this issue now moot because what the Ketua Audit Negara now can do is that it can claw into any private entities to trace the money trail, right? My hope is the next step, so we shouldn't rest on our laurels, we should consider how we can continue to improve further, is to consider how we can add certain key GLCs or Badan Berkanun as part of routine audits. And that can be done administratively, but we presently face challenges because Puan Zirawati will tell you that their plate is very, 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 very full. So in terms of manpower, we need to help them to lobby for more allocation to employ more people so that they'll be able to widen their scope. That's something which, if you as a citizen feel is important, are practical, low-hanging fruits that you can lobby for. Speak to your state assemblyman, speak to your member of parliament. If they have more hands, they can do more and they'll be able to increase public accountability and transparency, which eventually will be good for all. And I just want to emphasize the point that Puan Zirawati made just now, which is whistleblowing. So in the current climate where you're constrained by your resources in terms of manpower and funding, if you have to audit selectively, it is very helpful to have a signal from someone to say that, hey, something's not going very right there. Can you please look into it? And I assure you that the audit department in Malaysia is one of the most thorough department because for our library, PIPAS agency, I was made to understand that they went in as well because there was an allegation that we were not getting our money's worth. And literally, if your window is half an inch off your bill of quantities, they would record it and quantify it to make sure that they claw back that money from the contractor so that the people are not shortchanged. So do find avenues to channel your grievances if you do identify any. I hope not, but if you do identify any to them.
So I think just to add on the audit point that Puan Zirawati made is that the National Audit Department has a link for you to give, secure feedback that will be kept anonymous. And they do really pay attention to the number of complaints, about a specific entity that helps them determine scope of audit. So remember that 1MDB had a, audit report that must have come from a bunch of complaints because that was in the works even before the news broke out, right? And on the state and off-budget liabilities, this can be a very significant risk. For Brazil, it was one of their biggest issues, off-budget and liabilities coming from subnational governments that then forced them to put up Public Financial Management Reform and Fiscal Responsibility Act that constrained the state government's actions in taking on like uncontrolled liabilities. So I think Puan Zirawati alluded to like what can be done in terms of legal framework, right? Of course, this is not the low-hanging fruit, but you said earlier that, states is voluntary, right? How much you disclose. But if a state really wants to improve and institutionalize budget transparency, they can constrain themselves by putting up like enactment to say this is how much information we will give every year, right? So regardless of changes in government, that would be the standard, and it's harder to change a law once it's established, right? So same thing. If federal has just announced, Anwar announced that they are looking at GLC and FSB, statutory body, which is agencies governance law, and this could be also something that if federal takes up, hopefully then states will follow suit and improve the governance, constraining the agencies from taking out uncontrolled loans. They can't take out the loans, but their anak-anak syarikat can. So that is one issue that needs more oversight.
Thank you, Alisa. And I think I would invite all of you to check the Penyata Keuangan if you want to know sort of some of the off-budget liabilities. So our financial statement actually record, there's a memorandum liability for federal government and also state government. So there may be some of the numbers there that can show us the off-budget spending, off-budget liability that our government has to bear. And a good thing I think I want to remind everyone as well, the recently passed Public Finance and Fiscal Responsibility Act. Now I think the government should not guarantee, which is the case of an MDB, right? Should not guarantee debt more than 25% of GDP. As of now, I think we stand at 18% of GDP, so we have about 7% left. Depends on whether our GDP increase or decrease. So, but we have put some of the limitations on the way government guarantee on or posing our public finance to certain risks. So I think we are seeing some improvement, and I hope MyOBI will continue to push our governments, both at the federal and state to improve themselves in terms, not only in terms of transparency, but also accountability and better fiscal management. I hope you enjoy the discussions today. And thank you so much for all the three panelists here. And thank you for all of you for coming today and celebrating the launch today. Thank you.
Thank you, Uni and the panelists, and for all the questions. Please remain on stage for a quick photo session. Dear audience, for full results and further details, please feel free to visit our microsite, pantauwangkita.com. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of our event, it is my pleasure to lastly welcome Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Samsuri Mokhtar, Chief Minister of Terengganu, who will deliver the recorded closing remarks. Let's now turn to the recorded remarks from Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Samsuri.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Dengan rasa rendah diri, setinggi kesyukuran saya ucapkan kerana Terengganu dan Selangor berkongsi memperoleh tempat pertama dalam Malaysia Open Budget Index atau MyOBI pada tahun ini. Dan ini bermakna Terengganu mendapat tempat pertama selama 2 tahun berturut-turut. Inilah komitmen kami di Terengganu untuk mencapai ketulusan, integriti dan lebih bertanggungjawab dalam tadbir urus. Saya juga ingin mengucapkan tahniah kepada IDEAS di atas pelancaran Malaysia Open Budget Index MyOBI yang kali yang kedua ini. Saya berharap MyOBI dapat dilihat sebagai tanda aras kebangsaan bagi ketelusan belanjawan. Kami sedar bahawa adalah amat penting untuk semua kerajaan negeri menunjukkan komitmen tinggi terhadap ketelusan belanjawan dan memastikan wang rakyat dibelanjakan dengan sebaiknya. Bagi memupuk keyakinan terhadap institusi kerajaan, 3 teras diperlukan, iaitu yang pertama, kerajaan perlu menyediakan maklumat belanjawan yang menyeluruh dan cukup terperinci untuk masyarakat umum dan para ahli Dewan Undangan Negeri. Kedua, mekanisme seimbang perlu kukuh melalui pengawasan Dewan Undangan Negeri dan pengauditan. Dan yang ketiga, kerajaan juga perlu menyediakan saluran untuk rakyat memberi maklum balas dan cadangan berkenaan belanjawan negeri. Ketulusan belanjawan negeri adalah penting dalam memacu pembangunan ekonomi negeri masing-masing. Dengan menampilkan tadbir urus keuangan yang kukuh, pemimpin-pemimpin negeri dapat membuktikan bahawa kami memikul dengan penuh prihatin akan amanah yang diberi. Akhir sekali, Saya ingin menekankan bahawa dengan mekanisme semak imbang serta ketulusan yang mantap, ketirisan dapat dielakkan, rakyat diutamakan dan dasar-dasar negeri dijayakan. Semoga inisiatif MyOBI meraihkan kerjasama yang berterusan antara ideas dengan masyarakat sivil serta kerajaan negeri dalam usaha memastikan tadbir urus yang baik terus diamalkan demi kepentingan rakyat Malaysia secara keseluruhannya. Terima kasih semua.
Thank you, Datuk Sri. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ideas Malaysia, we would like to express our appreciation and gratitude to all the contributors and participants in making today's event a success. Before parting ways, once again, on behalf of Ideas, we would like to also express our appreciation to the EU for their support towards the report and this event. Before we end, as we know, it did not happen unless there is a photo. So let's have a final photo session. Everyone, please come to the front and bring a copy of the report.